few days after the baseball winter meetings, the Brewers do what everybody thought they were going to do, trade Devin Williams. Did they get enough pieces in return, and how do those pieces fit into this 40-man roster? We'll talk about that coming up next here on this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yeah, at first glance, I think we always look at these moves and say, did the Brewers get enough? We knew they were going to trade Devin Williams like they were going to trade Corbin Burnes last offseason. Did they get enough in return? And we'll talk about how these pieces do fit into the Milwaukee Brewers for 2025 and beyond. Good to have you along. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Locked On Brewers, great to have you along. We're here Monday through Friday talking Brewers baseball with you as always. And this edition is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Yeah, we do scrutinize these moves immediately. We all knew the Brewers were trading Devin Williams. That comes as no surprise to any Brewers fan, just like the Burnes deal last year. But what's the knee-jerk reaction? Did the Brewers get what they wanted? Are the fans happy with this move? Now, here's the deal. When the Brewers are making a trade, I feel like everybody in the world knows who the Brewers are going to deal because there's a pattern here. Guy goes into his final year of arbitration. He's on the trading block. Corbin Burnes. The Brewers got a history of this with guys. Sure, they kept Adames last year, and especially with closers. So automatically, when everyone in baseball knows you're trying to trade a guy, the value comes down a little bit. The trade value comes down. Number two, Devin Williams is a rental. Yeah, the Yankees might try to re-sign him, but he's got 1 year left on his deal. The Yankees do need a closer, but he's a rental, okay? So that lessens the value for a player like Devin Williams. And also, closers in baseball, how many teams will need closers? Now, the bad baseball teams won't need closers. The average baseball teams aren't probably going to have closers. The only teams that were going to be in the mix for the Devin Williams of the world are the teams that are competing for World Series titles. And we know who those teams are. Well, the Dodgers, we heard, were interested. The Phillies, of course, were interested. Maybe the Mets, who knows? The Yankees. And, of course, the Yankees name emerged in recent days. And you could see why it's limited out there. Let's face it. Player for player, with all things being equal, trading Devin Williams for Nestor Cortes and Caleb Durbin, on the surface, you look and you say, what's going on here? Devin Williams, the best closer in baseball. Cortes, a guy who was barely hanging on with the Yankees, got moved to the bullpen last year. And Caleb Durbin, 5'6" utility guy in the Yankee farm system. Yeah, all things being equal, you would never trade straight up salaries. All things equal, you would never trade Devin Williams for those two. A guy who's a bona fide stud out of your bullpen. Yeah, Devin had his moments in the postseason, and we can't overlook that. But still, he has been great with the Milwaukee Brewers. But as we know, and we found out with Josh Hader, the Brewers will not give these closers long-term extensions. They use them, and they're done with them. And that was the case with Devin Williams. So I really think that that's what brings down the trade value with Devin Williams. Yeah, you're not getting Aaron Judge in return, even if finances would work out for Devin Williams. Even the Brewers could afford a guy like Aaron Judge, although he had his postseason failures as well. I'm just saying. So this is what it is. I mean, again, man for man, the Brewers if you look at man for man, the Brewers, you would never, if you're choosing up size on a playground, you want Devin Williams? Okay, I'll take that guy and that guy. For Devin Williams? No, you'd want like 4 good players back. for Devin Williams. We're talking about a guy, not a middle-of-the-road utility guy out of the bullpen, a bona fide closer. Now, he was injured for a few months last year, and you do got to take that into account, the fractures in his back. So I don't know if that might have played a part in it too. But anyway, the Brewers do get a couple of players back. I was not happy to see this from Curt Hogue. Not against Curt Hogue. I like him. Solid reporter, covered the Milwaukee Brewers for the Journal Sentinel. But what he said about the Brewers, he says the Brewers, there's not a lot of financial flexibility this offseason. He put that out on a tweet. There's not a lot of financial flexibility in this offseason. Yeah, you kind of figured that. I just don't like hearing it. And it kind of bothers me. And we're going to save that for another time with the Milwaukee Brewers, this financial flexibility that they never seem to have. When it looks like the St. Louis Cardinals just down the road have all the financial flexibility in the world. Brewers did get $4.5 million in cash. I don't care about that. $4.5 million. That I'm looking at players right now and guys who are going to help me win not only the division, but get by the first round of the postseason. And if you look at it squarely in those terms, this move didn't do it. But they were trading Devin Williams. This move didn't make the Brewers better. You can't say after today, well, the Milwaukee Brewers just got better because they traded their all-star closer. And who'd they get? Well, they traded for a 5'6" player with the Yankees farm system who has yet to crack AAA, make it past AAA. And Nestor Cortes, a nice pitcher, an all-star a couple of years ago, but not a perennial all-star. He's not a Devin Williams type. Coming off an average season, wasn't pitching wasn't good enough for the Yankees that they moved him out of the starting rotation and into the bullpen. So, who closes next, and who are these guys that the Brewers got? We'll get to that coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Gametime, great sponsor here on Locked On Brewers. That's where I get my tickets. Not only Brewers tickets, but concert tickets. I got some concert tickets for this past weekend. Those prices were dropping. The concert was Sunday, and by Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was monitoring it on Gametime, and those prices got right where I wanted. It's like a stock. Got right where I wanted it, and I was all in. There's all in pricing on Gametime. You toggle that feature, and you'll get all the totals up front. You won't get any surprises. But what I like best is the seat views, the panoramic view, beautiful view. You compare them to other ticket apps, and it's a no-brainer. Gametime, lock, stock, and barrel every time is a terrific presentation, and they got the lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the discount. I love their panoramic view from the seat in the app, so you can see, hey, this is where I'm sitting. I am all in. Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered, the most flexible customer service policy in the business. So, what do you need to do? Download the Gametime app first. Download the Gametime app. Use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB. When you use that promo code, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Not bad. Buy $80 worth of Milwaukee Bucks tickets, you get them for $60. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On MLB. You got to use that code Locked On MLB to get the $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Concerts, comedy shows, college sporting events, you name it. Milwaukee Bucks, NBA, not only in Wisconsin, but across the United States. Go to Gametime. That is where I go to get all my tickets. And I'm great to have you along here on a Friday midday. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. If you're just joining us for a first time, thank you very much. You just saw our instant reaction video about an hour ago. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You get our podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. That's where we are on Locked On Brewers. And of course, those of you who download the audio version, go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode. Our growing YouTube audience. We've been growing, man. I've been doing this for just under 2 years now and love it. Love it, love it, love it. And I'm really proud of the way we've been able to grow the audience, especially on YouTube. And of course, you follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, F-R-E-I-M-A-N. M-U-N-D. So who closes? Well, we've talked about McGill coming out of the bullpen, who saved, 18 of 20 last year off the top of my head. Games throws 100. Okay. Am I all in as McGill as my closer? As right now, he's my number one option out there. Subject to change. He's had a history. He's not like a guy who's been like Devin Williams, who's come in and been a bona fide all-star. McGill has bounced around a little bit on a few different teams, but he came in and provided the Brewers what they needed when Devin Williams went down. The Brewers were, when Devin went down last year, in games they did not have him, they were 48-33. In other words, when he was on the injured list, when Williams was on the injured list, they were 48-33. And that's because Williams was coming out of the bullpen, throwing BBs at 100 miles an hour and getting the job done. And it was when Williams came back, there was a nice 8-9 right there. He had Williams in the 8th. He had Devin coming in the 9th. So McGill, now somehow if McGill doesn't work out of the bullpen, well, there's a couple of options. I like Uribe. I do. Now he's coming off knee surgery, and it wasn't a banner year for him in 2024 in a number of different areas, but still, Uribe throws 100. Okay. Animated out there, good guy, competitor, needs to get the ball over the plate because obviously we've seen games with Uribe coming in there and he's all over the map. Don't need that from Uribe. But hopefully some more seasoning. Let's see how he works out of the bullpen. I know some of you have talked about Mizorowski. He is not going to be competing for the closer's role. McGill goes in the spring training as of right now, the closer. The Miz is going to be on this team. He's on the 40-man. He's going to be on this team. We'll see where he lines up. The Brewers do have a plan for him. I imagine he might be in the same role as where the Brewers had Corbin Burns in 2018. Remember when they brought Burns up in 2018? They had him pitching out of the bullpen in September and pitching very well in spots and pitching multiple innings at times. That might be Mizorowski. So McGill, Uribe, Mizorowski right now are my top three options. If one fails, the next guy. And then that's 1, 2, 3 with me. One time I thought Payamps, and I don't want to not include Payamps. I have not shut the door. I just want to see more progress out of Payamps. Peguero, I don't look at him as I'm a guy with closer's ability. Peguero, not at all. So that's the way I stack up. McGill, Uribe, and Mizorowski. Now, who do the Brewers get returned? Who are these new guys? Let me take a quick drink here. I love it. Got out of the shower today and got the news about Devin Williams, and I was fired up. Well, fired up that there was some Brewers news. Not exactly all in on who they got because I knew there was going to be in for a letdown on this. I knew I'm whoever they traded to, just like Burns last year when they got back Ortiz and DL Hall. You're like, the guys they got back here. Nestor Cortes, nasty Nestor, who was the opening day starter with the Yankees last year when Garrett Cole couldn't go, and eventually got shipped out to the bullpen. Okay, shipped out to the bullpen, and he was not happy about it because he was an all-star the previous year, an all-star starter. 9-10 this past year, a 3.77 earned run average, 1 year left on his deal. So he basically is a rental as well. The Brewers traded a rental for a rental and then got a prospect alongside of it. So I thought the Brewers, I had hoped that they would get a veteran player and a couple of prospects in return. Now they got one guy, the Durban, who we're going to get to here in a little bit. He's a prospect. I still could, obviously he's a prospect because he hasn't played in the major leagues. Thought maybe one more guy. But as I mentioned before, it's tough to trade a guy who everybody in the league knows is on the trading block. But Cortes, he'll come in and he's going to be in the starting rotation. Left-hander. Now, the Brewers have 7 starters right now. 7 starters in this rotation I'm looking at. And that's including DL Hall and Ashby. All right. I talked about the rotation on yesterday's podcast. If you want to go back and listen to yesterday's podcast, I talked about the rotation. I still think they're going to try to trade Savale, especially now, because they're finding room for Cortes in that rotation. They traded for him. He's going in this rotation as a one-year rental. And just like any other starter that they've traded for in the past, who has a year left on his contract, like a Frankie Montes, don't buy any, when you go into the Brewers pro shops, even if Nestor Cortes gets off to a 7-0 start, do not buy any jerseys with Cortes on the back, because they'll be on the for sale rack probably by next year this time. But he's going to be in this bullpen. He's going to be in this rotation, and we'll see. The Yankees, by the way, seem to be very delighted over the deal. The Yankee fans seem to be very delighted over this. Cortes didn't seem like he really had a place in New York when they shipped him to the bullpen. And of course, Yankee fans weren't too happy when he gave up that grand slam to Freddie Freeman in Game 1 of the World Series. You know, that Alonso hit the 3-run jack against Devin Williams. Okay, and that kind of hangs in Brewer fans' mind, even though Williams did great things here. Cortes giving up the granny to Freddie Freeman in Game 1 of the World Series. That one sticks in the craw of Yankee fans. But I'm not going to hold that against him. He threw one right in Freddie's wheelhouse, though, that day. So I still think the Brewers will deal Savale. I think they'll deal Savale. They'll create a spot in the rotation for Cortes, left-hander. Brewers have an abundance of left-handers now. Handful of guys, lefties. They have 7 starters. Well, that's a good spot to be in if you're the Brewers with starters, having an abundance of starters. Now, let's get to Caleb Durbin. The Yankees in the offseason really propped him up. Aaron Boone went so far to say, called him a stud, said, this guy could be in our starting lineup next spring. Yeah, it turns out we knew what Aaron Boone was trying to do. He was propping up the trade value of Caleb Durbin. Now, he's never risen higher than AAA. He had a good run in the Arizona Fall League this past year. It sounded like he broke the stolen record with 29, stolen base record 29. I don't put a tremendous amount of stock into the Arizona Fall League, to be honest with you. I'm not saying, well, geez, great. Guy was amazing at the Arizona Fall League. Let's put him over at third base. I hope he's not the answer for the Brewers at third base right now. With all due respect to Caleb Durbin here, we're trying to win a World Series championship. Durbin sounds a lot like the guys the Brewers already have. A guy who can steal bases, a guy who's good defensively, a guy who's versatile, a hard-nosed, high-motor guy. Terang, Frelick, 2 guys off the top of my head who match that description for the Milwaukee Brewers. But at 5'6", and I've mentioned that a few times, here's the thing about being 5'6". I always think when you're that size, you're limited in a way. He's never going to become a big bopper over at third base or wherever he plays. Okay. He's going to work his butt off because the guy 5'6" has got to work his rear end off and play hard. He's got to overcome his physical limitations. But I hope he's not an answer in that infield right now. We'll see if he makes the team. Again, this isn't the Pittsburgh Pirates we're talking about here. We're talking about the Milwaukee Brewers, the 2-time division champs here, defending division champs. I don't look at it right away. Well, the Brewers got their third baseman. He's versatile. He can play second, short. He's the third base. I don't care what Aaron Boone says. All right. I want to do a little bit better than this at third base. Okay. Got some home runs to make up for it third base with the loss of Adames. So if you're telling me right now I'm trading out Caleb Durbin for Adames in the infield, that's not a contending team to me. That's a big dip off in production. Now, Caleb Durbin, is he going to be Freddie Patek coming in here? An old school mention. I know some of you guys will remember that name from the old Kansas City Royals. Is he going to make the team? What are the Brewers' plans for him? We haven't heard any of that just yet, and we'll hear about that in the days to come. We are just talking about basically this deal made within an hour or two or go for the Milwaukee Brewers. But we'll see where he shows up and what the Brewers' plans are for him. We come back, we'll sum it up. We'll sum up this entire trade. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. FanDuel. The NFL is coming up this weekend. Got some college football games as well, and the bowl games are coming up as well. Get into all the action on FanDuel. Check out this deal. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place some live bets on the NFL all in one place. And right now, you're a new customer. You bet $5, you'll get $150 in bonus bets when you win that $5 bet. Place the $5 bet, you'll get $150 put into your account when you win that bet. The live betting on FanDuel, fantastic. I love betting, live betting on the Kansas City Chiefs. It's worked out for me pretty well. But if, let's say, you see your team, let's say the Packers get down in Seattle on Sunday, and you say, well, geez, I got better odds. I'm getting plus points now. And you think they're going to win Seattle. Well, and you can do it vice versa. If you think the Brewers get up or the Packers get up early and you think Seattle's still going to win, well, you get better odds than you do before the game. View the live play-by-play, the latest stats, so much more on that same page where you place your bets on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel today, FanDuel.com. You'll get $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. And I love their live betting on all sports. Maybe you want to get to college basketball. They have it there. Hey, the holidays are coming. That means sports all day and all night. And you know how it is over the holidays. You got the relatives over. You get tired of talking to them and all that. You know, that brother-in-law or that son-in-law. God, you're just tired. After 10 minutes, you want to move on. Well, there's action on TV, and there's action to cover that stuff on TV on FanDuel. $150 in bonus bets. Your first live bet. If you that first bet, a $5 bet, you win it. You get $150 deposited in your account with FanDuel. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. All right. Nestor Cortes, Caleb Durbin, and cash. $4.5 million in cash. Yeah, the Brewers need that cash. They are limited on financial flexibility this offseason. Just what every Brewers fan wants to hear. Limited on financial flexibility. Win division titles back-to-back year seasons. You bust out in the first round, but we're limited. It's amazing. I mean, if you think about it, last two seasons, the Brewers win the division, and you think they want to get better in the offseason. But they go and trade away their all-star starter last year in Corbin Burnes. This winter, they go and trade their all-star closer, Devin Williams, because of both guys had 1 year left on their deals. That's what you do. You got to deal these guys. That's the crummy version of the way the financial setup is in Major League Baseball. Guaranteed contracts and everything else. It stinks. I hate it, but this is the system that we're living in, and it's never going to change. They tried changing it 30 years. This is the way it is for the Milwaukee Brewers. They get something nice, and he's gone. Let's face it, when Churiel, 8 years from now, exceeds that contract, you think the Brewers, where's baseball going to be 8 years from now if we're given $700 million to, not the Brewers, but if we're given $700 million for a player over 15 years? Where is baseball going to be 2, 3, 7 years from now? And a guy like Churiel. Well, Corbin Burnes, Devin Williams, they're not going to earn that type of cash. But both guys are going to get paid handsomely in the offseason. Burnes still looking for that free agent contract this year. It sucks that the Brewers can't keep nice things. It really does. because they get to that final year, and it's like, are you going to hold on to him or not? And I think if Adames last year, I think if Adames would have come off a solid 2023, I think the Brewers might have dealt him off last year already. His stock value wasn't as high as it was, wouldn't have been as high as it was this offseason if he had another year of arbitration, if he had one more year of team control. So the Brewers did keep him in the offseason last year, which I'm glad they did. They made it to the postseason. They won 93 games. But this is going to be a turnstile of events for the Brewers for the foreseeable future. Get a guy, he's good, lose him after 6 years, or his sixth year after he becomes a free agent. It's just the way it is. And Nestor Cortes, we'll see what the Brewers' plans, how they fit him into the rotation, and who's the odd man out. Plenty of questions to be answered. And I'm curious to see what the organization says about Caleb Durbin. We'll talk about that in my next episode of Locked On Brewers. Hey, everybody. Have yourself a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen to every day here on Locked On Brewers. For your second listen, go to my guy Sully, Locked On MLB. He's got all the hot stove news every day on Locked On MLB. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This is Chuck Freeman. Good night, everybody.